Alright, let's go. Number 10. The implanted childhood. Elizabeth Loftus was not trying to break anyone. In the early 1970s at the University of Washington, she was working on a dull, applied problem: why witnesses to the same traffic accident give wildly different speed estimates. It was a courtroom question, not a philosophical one. She wanted to help lawyers understand a margin of error. The model of memory she inherited was archival. Experience gets encoded, filed, and later retrieved. Retrieval could fail, you could lose the file, you could pull the wrong one, but the file itself was assumed to sit there unchanged, like a photograph in a drawer. Distortion happened at the point of reading, not at the point of storage. Then she changed a single word. Loftus and John Palmer, 1974, in the Journal of Verbal Learning and Verbal Behavior, subjects who were asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed reported 40.8 miles per hour. Subjects asked when they hit reported 34.0. A week later, the smashed group was significantly more likely to report seeing broken glass. There was no broken glass in the film. That was a detail. In 1995, with Jacqueline Pickrell in Psychiatric Annals, she went after an entire event. 24 participants read a booklet of 4 childhood episodes supplied by a family member. 3 were real. The 4th, being lost in a shopping mall around age 5, crying, rescued by an elderly stranger, had never happened. 6 of the 24 came to remember it. Some added material that was never in the booklet. The man's flannel shirt, his glasses, his balding head. The obvious escape was compliance, subjects guessing what the experimenter wanted. But several defended the memory after being told it was fabricated, and a few argued. The next escape was plausibility. Perhaps a mall is too easy. Ira Hyman and F. James Billings at Cornell implanted a spilled punch bowl at a wedding in 1998 and got 25%. Stephen Porter and John Ewell implanted a serious animal attack in 1999 and got 26. Kimberly Wade and Marianne Gary, using one doctored photograph, got 50. The last escape was personality, that only suggestible people are vulnerable. Alan Scaboria pooled 8 studies and 423 subjects in the journal Memory in 2017 and found roughly 30% susceptibility with no protective profile. You have a childhood memory you have never verified with anyone. Most people have several. How would you tell the difference from the inside? The next finding suggests the problem is worse. The act of remembering is itself the point of failure. Number 9. The Reconsolidation Window. Kareem Nader was a postdoc in Joseph Ledoux's lab at New York University, working on one of the most settled paradigms in behavioral neuroscience: fear conditioning in rats. Tone, then shock. The rat freezes at the tone. It is a workhorse assay, used to test drugs, map circuits, and confirm what everyone already knew about how memories become permanent. The doctrine was consolidation, and it was a century old. Georg Miller and Alphonse Pilsecker proposed in 1900 that memories are fragile at first, and then fix in place. Donald Hebb gave it a cellular story in 1949. Once a memory has consolidated, once the proteins have been synthesized and the synapses restructured, it is done. Permanent. You can lose access to it, but you cannot edit the file. Nader proposed testing whether that was actually true. Ledoux reportedly told him the experiment would not work. Nader, Glenshoff, and Ledoux, Nature, August 2000. They took rats with a fully consolidated fear memory, played the tone to reactivate it, and then infused anisomycin, a protein synthesis blocker, into the lateral amygdala. The memory did not survive. Rats that had been reactivated and then blocked showed almost no freezing. Rats given the identical drug without reactivation were unaffected. Recalling the memory had returned it to a chemically vulnerable state. The field's first move was to call it retrieval failure rather than erasure, the memory hiding, not gone. But it did not spontaneously recover after 14 days, and reminder shocks did not bring it back. The second move was to confine it to the amygdala, or to fear, or to rodents. Jacek Diebiek and Nader reported hippocampal memories 40, 5 days old, still going label in Neuron in 2002. Daniela Schiller, then at New, published a purely behavioral version in Humans in Nature in 2010. No drug, just extinction training delivered inside the reactivation window, and the fear response did not return a year later. The third move was boundary conditions. Christina Alberini's group showed older and stronger memories resist. That is a limit, not a reprieve. It narrows the window. It does not close it. Every time you have recalled your father's voice, you have opened that file for writing. What survives 100 openings? Some of these rewrites are not private. Some are shared by millions of people who have never met. Number 8. The Convergent Error. Wilma Bainbridge at the University of Chicago studies memorability, the odd, robust finding that some images are remembered by nearly everyone and others by nearly no one, independent of who is looking. It is a question about images, not about people. Her lab catalogs what makes a face or a scene stick. Standard error theory predicts that when memory fails, it fails idiosyncratically. Your encoding history is yours. Your associations are yours. If 1,000 people misremember a logo, they should misremember it in 1,000 scattered directions. Noise around a true value, canceling out. Shared error implies shared machinery producing the same wrong answer. Bainbridge and Dipasri Prasad tested 100 widely recognized icons and found that 7 produced the same specific false memory in most people who got them wrong. Prasad and Bainbridge, Psychonomic Bulletin and Review 2022, across 4 experiments, subjects recognized the correct C3PO as the true image well below chance and consistently selected the version with 2 gold legs. C3PO has a silver right leg. The Monopoly Man acquired a monocle he has never worn. Pikachu acquired a black-tipped tail he has never had. The Fruit of the Loom cornucopia has never existed. In free drawing tasks with no options presented, subjects drew the errors from scratch. Prior exposure was tested and did not predict the effect. Visual attention was tested with eye tracking. Subjects looked directly at C3PO's silver leg and still failed. Schema-based accounts explain some cases and not others. A monocle fits the Tycoon prototype, but no prototype explains Pikachu's tail. Bainbridge has been explicit that the cause remains unidentified. This is not a story about internet folklore. It is a controlled demonstration that human memory contains error attractors, specific wrong answers the system converges on, reliably across strangers. Your errors are not all your own. Confidence, at least, ought to track accuracy. It does not. Number 7. The Flashbulb Divergence. David Rubin at Duke had spent decades on ordinary autobiographical memory, what people recall from an average Tuesday, and how it decays. On the morning of September 12, 2001, he and Jennifer Tallarico did something opportunistic and cold. They walked into classrooms and handed out questionnaires. Roger Brown and James Kulik had proposed in 1977 that shocking public events create flashbulb memories through a special neural mechanism, a print-now signal that captures the moment with unusual fidelity. The prediction is straightforward. These memories should decay more slowly than everyday ones. 54 students recorded their September 11 memory, and alongside it, an ordinary memory from the same period. Retested at 1, 6, or 32 weeks, the two decayed at the same rate. Tallarico and Rubin, Psychological Science, 2003, consistency for the flashbulb memory was statistically indistinguishable from the everyday memory at every interval. What diverged was belief, ratings of vividness, recollection, and confidence stayed high for September 11 and dropped for the mundane control. William Hurst's consortium followed more than 3,000 Americans for a decade. Publishing in the Journal of Experimental Psychology in 2009 and again in 2015, accuracy fell sharply in the first year, plateaued near 60%, and confidence stayed above 4 out of 5 throughout. The special mechanism defense collapsed first. There is no fidelity advantage to explain. Rehearsal was proposed. These events are discussed constantly, but rehearsal was measured. And heavy rehearsal correlated with confidence, not with accuracy. Emotional intensity at encoding predicted vividness, not correctness. Ulrich Neisser and Nicole Harsh had already shown the endpoint with the Challenger explosion in 1992. Of 44 subjects retested after 2.5 years, 11 scored 0 out of 7. Shown their own handwriting from the morning after, some refused to accept it. One insisted the earlier account must be wrong. The memories you are most certain of are not the ones you are most correct about. The certainty is generated separately, and that certainty can be manufactured by someone else, after the fact. Number 6. The feedback effect. Gary Wells at Iowa State University was working on a procedural question for police departments: how to build a fair lineup, filler selection, instructions, presentation order. Engineering, not epistemology. The goal was to reduce a known error rate in a system already in use. Confidence was the system's safeguard. A witness who identifies a suspect and says they are certain is treated as more reliable than one who hesitates, by juries and judges alike. For that to work, confidence must be formed at the moment of identification, out of the quality of the witness's own memory, and stay put. Wells and Amy Bradfield ran a lineup that did not contain the perpetrator. Every identification was wrong. Then an experimenter said, to some of them, good, you identified the suspect. Wells and Bradfield, Journal of Applied Psychology, 1998, witnesses given confirming feedback reported dramatically higher confidence than those given none, and also reported that they had gotten a better view, paid closer attention, found it easier to identify the face, and could recall his features more clearly. All of it retrospective. All of it about an event they had witnessed identically. Nothing about the original viewing had changed except one sentence spoken afterwards. Warning witnesses in advance reduced but did not eliminate it. Asking them to introspect on whether they had been influenced did not work. The effect operates without any awareness of dishonesty. And these witnesses are not lying. Requiring immediate confidence statements before any feedback helps, which is why it is now recommended practice, and it does nothing for the thousands of cases already tried. The Innocence Project reports that mistaken eyewitness identification featured in roughly 70% of convictions later overturned by DINA. Jennifer Thompson studied her attacker's face deliberately, testified with total certainty, and sent Ronald Cotton to prison for 11 years. She was not careless. She was careful and confident in wrong. If confidence can be installed from outside, what is it measuring? The obvious remedy is evidence. Evidence turns out to be weaker than expected. Number 5. The incomplete correction. Kimberly Wade was a graduate student with Marianne Gary at Victoria University of Wellington, studying imagination inflation, the finding that merely picturing an event raises your later confidence that it happened. She wanted a stronger manipulation than words. Photographs seem like the natural next step. The assumption underneath all correction procedures is symmetry. If false information can be added to a memory, accurate information should be able to remove it. Tell the subject the truth, show them the proof, and the record returns to baseline. Debriefing is built on this. So is every retraction ever printed. Wade doctored a family photograph to show each subject, as a child, in a hot air balloon they had never ridden. Wade, Gary, Don Reed and Stephen Lindsay, Psychonomic Bulletin and Review, 2002. Half of the 20 participants reported partial or complete memories of the balloon ride across 3 interviews, several describing the wind in the basket. Robert Nash and Wade later showed subjects fabricated video of themselves cheating on a task in memory and cognition. Subjects confessed and reported memories of doing it. The reversal problem was quantified by Holland Johnson and Colleen Seifert in the Journal of Experimental Psychology in 1994. Retracted information keeps influencing inference afterwards. Gordon Blank and Klein Launay's 2014 meta-analysis found that even optimally designed post-warnings cut misinformation effects by roughly half. Simply repeating the correction increases familiarity with the false claim, which can strengthen it. Detailed corrections that restate the falsehood do the same. The one procedure with real success, Eileen Eberst's group, in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2021, required subjects to reconsider the source of each memory repeatedly over multiple sessions, and reduced but did not erase false memory rates. You have been corrected about things. You were told the truth, and you accepted it. Which parts of the false version are still in there, doing work? Even setting aside outside interference, the same memory is never assembled the same way twice. Number 4. The migrating viewpoint. Georgia Negro was working with Ulrich Neisser at Cornell on a descriptive question, not whether memories are accurate, but what they look like. Neisser had spent years arguing that laboratory memory research had drifted from real remembering. This was fieldwork on the phenomenology. The intuitive model is playback. You recorded the scene from behind your own eyes, and recall replays it from there. Perspective is a fixed property of the recording, because it was fixed by where your head was at the time. They asked subjects to describe personal memories and report the vantage point. A large fraction were seen from outside the body. Negro and Neisser, Cognitive Psychology, 1983, recent memories tended to be reported in the field perspective, through the original eyes, while older memories and emotionally scrutinized ones shifted to the observer perspective, with the rememberer visible in the scene. That viewpoint is a reconstruction. It was never recorded. Peggy St. Jacques, now at the University of Alberta, showed in a series of studies that deliberately shifting perspective during retrieval changes what is recalled on subsequent attempts. The retrieval itself edits the trace. Neuroimaging work from Janice Chen and Uri Hassan's group at Princeton in Nature Neuroscience in 2017 found that recall reactivates encoding patterns in overlapping but measurably shifted form, and that the shift is systematic rather than random noise. Motivated distortion was proposed, that we step outside ourselves to soften painful scenes, but the migration also occurs for neutral memories with age. Narrative contamination was proposed, that we adopt the camera angle of stories we have told. That may contribute, and it does not explain memories never told to anyone. The scenes you carry from age 6 are shot from a camera position no one ever occupied. If the vantage point was constructed, what else was? There is a state in which the machinery announces itself, and no one can say what it is doing. Number 3. The familiarity without source. Ann Cleary at Colorado State University was studying recognition without recall, the ordinary experience of finding something familiar while being unable to say why. Tip-of-the-tongue states, mostly, word lists. A narrow laboratory phenomenon with a decades-long literature. Recognition is normally modeled with two processes: recollection, which supplies the source and the context, and familiarity, which supplies only a signal of prior encounter. Under standard accounts, the two travel together often enough that a strong familiarity signal with no retrievable source should be rare and weak. Cleary built virtual scenes that shared their spatial layout with earlier scenes but none of their content, and Déjà Vu appeared on demand. Cleary and colleagues, Consciousness and Cognition, 2012, subjects navigating a novel virtual environment that matched the configuration of a previously viewed one, reported significantly elevated déjà vu, and their familiarity ratings tracked configural similarity while explicit recall failed. On the clinical side, Jean Banco, Patrick Chauvel and Eric Halgren published Direct Evidence in Brain in 1994. Electrical stimulation in 16 temporal lobe epilepsy patients produced déjà vu from the rhinal cortex, and elaborate reminiscence from the hippocampus and amygdala. Anatomically separable, reliably triggerable. The neural transmission delay hypothesis, one hemisphere arriving late, has never produced a testable prediction that survived. The microseizure account cannot explain healthy subjects. Divided attention accounts predict the effect should scale with distraction. It does not, cleanly. Cleary tested the most interesting claim herself. With Alexander Claxton in Psychological Science in 2018, subjects in a déjà vu state felt strongly that they could predict what came next. Their actual prediction accuracy was a chance. The premonition is generated by the same system, and it is empty. Your brain can produce a formal, insistent report that you have been somewhere before, with no referent behind it. It has done this to you. How would you know when it is right? Under the right conditions, that same signal can be given a false referent, in detail, by suggestion alone. Number 2. The manufactured recovery. Jean-Roch Laurence and Campbell Perry at Concordia University in Montreal were investigating hypnotic responsiveness, who is highly hypnotizable, and what that trait actually consists of. Hypnosis was then being used clinically to enhance memory retrieval, on the assumption that it lowered inhibition around material already stored. The premise of memory recovery is that the past is preserved and merely blocked. Suggestion under hypnosis is supposed to remove the block. Whatever comes out must therefore have come from somewhere. The alternative, that the procedure generates the content, was regarded as a fringe concern. Laurence and Perry age-regressed 27 highly hypnotizable subjects to a night the previous week and suggested they had been woken by a loud noise. Laurence and Perry Science, 1983, 13 of the 27 reported the noise as a real event afterwards. When told the memory had been suggested during hypnosis, roughly half of those maintained it anyway, several stating explicitly that they were certain it had happened. Richard Ofshe documented the endpoint in the International Journal of Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis in 1992. In the case of Paul Ingram, Ofshe described to Ingram a scenario he had invented, involving events no accuser had alleged. Ingram, after a period of prayer and concentration, produced a detailed confession to it. Hypermnesia, genuinely improved recall under hypnosis, has been tested repeatedly and yields more material of both kinds, with accuracy unchanged and confidence inflated. The specificity argument, that detail implies authenticity, fails against Marcia Johnson's source monitoring framework, published in Psychological Bulletin in 1993. Vividness and detail are cues the system uses to judge origin. And imagination generates both. Corroboration is the only remaining test, and where it has been sought in these cases, it has largely failed. The American Psychological Association's 1995 working group could not reach consensus and said so. There is no internal marker on a memory that says where it came from. The system infers it, every time, from the memory's texture. If detail is the evidence, what is a rich false memory evidence of? The last one moves the problem out of psychology and into the tissue itself. Number 1. The unstable engram. Susumu Tonegawa won a Nobel Prize in immunology and then moved to memory at MIT, chasing the oldest question in the field: where is a memory physically located? Richard Seaman named the hypothetical trace an engram in 1904. For a century, nobody could point to one. If the engram is the substrate, the specific ensemble of neurons whose reactivation constitutes the memory, then it should be a stable object. Activate the right cells and you get the memory back. That is what it means for the past to be stored. Tonegawa's group tagged the dentate gyrus cells active during one context, then reactivated them with light while shocking the mouse in a different context. Steve Ramirez, Shu Lu, and Tonegawa, Science, July 2013. The mouse subsequently froze in the first context, where nothing bad had ever happened to it. A fear memory had been assembled from a real ensemble and a real shock that never co-occurred, and the animal could not tell. The follow-up problem came from Yaniv Ziv, Mark Schnitzer, and colleagues in Nature Neuroscience the same year. Imaging hippocampal cells across weeks in mice moving through an unchanged environment, they found the population coding that environment turning over substantially, while the animal's behavior stayed identical. The artifact objection that optogenetic activation is nothing like natural recall has been eroded by demonstrations that the tagged ensembles are necessary and sufficient for natural retrieval. The generalization objection failed against controls. Representational drift was initially read as measurement error, then as instability specific to the hippocampus. It has since been reported in cortex, and Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn have argued the drift is a feature of how ensembles are allocated, not a fault. Every memory you have is held in a pattern that is quietly migrating through cells while you sleep. The content appears stable. The thing holding it is not. What exactly is preserved if the substrate keeps changing? 10 entries, and not one of them sits at the far edge of the science. Loftus is in the textbooks. Reconsolidation is a mainstream research program. The eyewitness data reshape police procedure in multiple countries. These are not fringe results awaiting refutation. They are the settled center of memory research, and what they say collectively is that remembering is not retrieval. It is construction, performed fresh each time, using cues, expectation, and whatever was said to you last. The past is not a place you visit. It is a thing you are building, right now, out of materials that are still wet. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now.